Ashleigh, do you believe in manifestation?
I believe in intentions. I believe that what we focus on changes what we notice, and what we attempt and sometimes what we believe is possible. But I do believe that we can make some things happen just by thinking hard enough. No. If that worked, I would be a cajillionaire. I would sleep regularly, and I would still be in my pre-pregnancy jeans.
Ah, okay. So what you're saying is that a vision board may not be enough.
Apparently, there is some red tape and paperwork required, follow-up, discomfort, phone conversations with people who don't like their job, consistency, probably a licensing permit somewhere along the way.
Which is why we invited an electrician.
Exactly. Today, we are going to move past vision boards and good vibes, and we're going to talk about what happens when intention to survive comes in contact with the actual real world of manifestation.
Yeah, so welcome to Third Space Conversations. This is the space between who you are, who you've been, and the world, and who you are becoming, who the world is shaping you into.
Woo.
I'm Jennifer Harvey.
And I'm Ashleigh.
And today we're going to have an honest conversation about identity, relationships, work, ambition, growth, and all the complicated things that we're usually expected to have figured out already.
As usual, we are not going to promise having perfect answers or perfect anecdotes. We are just here to try and give you something to think about and maybe some perspective.
Yeah, we do promise, though, to be curious, honest, and occasionally ask some uncomfortable questions.
So today we're asking, what does manifestation look like once wishing upon a star stops and the hard work begins? Today, we are joined by Jessie Lensing, co-owner and founder of Supersun Electrical Services here in Round Rock. Jessie and her husband Gabe started Supersun with the mission to redefine what people should expect from an electrical contract. Emphasis on transparency, education, safety, communication, and excellent craftsmanship. It did not become this kind of a company, though, because Jessie and Gabe simply just thought it into being. They had to build it through systems, failures, attention to detail, standards, and a willingness to stand behind what it is that they do and say. So Jessie is joining us today to talk about what practical workhorse manifestation actually looks like when you're building a business from the ground up. Jessie, thank you for being here.
That was such a beautiful intro. We just did in Whirl last week where we did a 30-second intro swap. And so you got to hear what people think of you and their perception of your intro. And dang, you nailed it. That was exactly the type of messaging that I would hope for myself and for our business. So kick ass.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. So before we get into kind of the woo territory of it, right? What is the defining moment where you and Gabe decided, hey, we're going to do this? And what did that look like initially? And we'll get into kind of how some of the growth pinnacled and dropped and kind of what that roller coaster was like. But when y'all were like, hey, let's give up our 9 to 5 and start a thing, what did that look like? Was it just a dream? Did you just dive in with both feet and a red pen?
A little bit of both, honestly. I wouldn't say it was one defining moment. It was a culmination of different moments. For Gabe, it was a realization early on in his electrical career that electrical craftsmen were undervalued. And really, when it came to the passion behind the work, it was lacking a lot. Most of the construction blue collar guys were, I'm showing up for a paycheck. If it's done right, who cares? And Gabe developed a passion to transform that, to build better electricians who really cared about their craftsmanship. And I had a different experience. I do not have an electrical background. I have a background in interior design. I worked in the commercial furniture industry for about 4 years, and I had a series of really crappy managers. And so my passion for our business was developed from a mistreatment as an employee and thinking through, like, there's got to be a better way to do this. So a lot of little moments on both sides. And I would say I wouldn't call this the defining moment, but there was a trigger point that caused us to launch the business, which was he got his master's license, which in Texas, to get your Texas electrical contract, well, to get your master electrical license, you need to have 12,000 working hours and take 2 exams. And he passed the exam. Then we got our Texas electrical contractor's license, which is a whole nother story on the difference between those two. But he went into his boss and he said, "Hey, I just passed my master's exam. I have this dream of starting my own company, and I'm really eager to start pursuing that. But I want to be able to close out my time here in an appropriate manner. So I would like to give you a 6 months notice while I start setting the groundwork for building my business, and I'll close out my time here." And the boss did not like the idea that we were going to be a competing business, and so that was on a Friday. Gabe passed his exam. The next Monday is when he had that conversation, and the Monday after that, his boss was like, "You gotta go." So Gabe called
Yeah.
me, being driven home because he had a company vehicle. So being driven home by another employee, he said, "Hey Jess, we're starting our business." So that Tuesday we launched our website. That Wednesday we bought a work van. That Thursday we got our t-shirts, and that Friday we ran our first
Wow.
goal.
That's incredible. So, I want to focus on, when we talk about manifestation, one of the things that I think we hear in all of the woo spaces is, right, like, will it, believe it, receive it. There's these kind of like catchy phrases, right? And I love that from the get-go, your intention was never to just be like, okay, we're going to just think really hard, and when the time is right, it's just going to happen for us. You walked into this going, cool, we're going to have a 6-month plan, and the time became right? Like your runway got shortened drastically, and you were forced to take action to manifest this into being a real thing, as opposed to sitting around and being like, oh, is it right
Yeah.
now? Like, no, maybe I go look for another electrical job to contract in. You took that and ran with it
Yeah.
for what it is. And I always love people who say, the statement, Jesus, take the wheel, and I'm always like, yeah, but keep your foot on the gas, right? Like, you're not going anywhere if you're just doing this and there's no gas behind it.
Oh yeah.
I love that y'all were willing to accept whatever came your way, but you still had a plan. You still had your foot on the gas. You still had intention. It wasn't just lip service to a dream.
Well, and I have to say, we started our entrepreneurial journey probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years before Gabe passed his master's exam. And I would call really the beginning of our entrepreneurial journey was a mindset shift. So I was going on a health and fitness journey, and I was introduced to Andy Frisella's podcast called the MF CEO. MF stands for exactly what you think it does. It is not PC, so if you are easily offended, it is not for you. But it's very mindset driven, very success entrepreneurial, and starting to listen to that was really the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey. A year or two before we went into business, Gabe started listening to Alex and Layla Hermosi, who are also successful business owners. And so we really started transforming our mind before we took that action. But you can't spend all day, every day in that mindset. It's the mindset plus the action that leads to creating something. So I think that's what gets confused often when people talk about manifestation, because they're like, if I think really hard, it'll happen. And you do have to have your mindset solely focused on whatever you want to achieve, but it's the action that you take that makes it happen.
100%. And I also think, don't get me wrong, I love a vision board. Okay. I will sit down and cut pictures out of a magazine all day long. I do not think that's going to give me 6-pack abs, right? Like, I'm realistic that it's nothing more than a visual representation. Same with like writing down my manifestation, right? That's just a visual representation to keep me focused. And I think you're right. A lot of people mistake, if I write, $1 million bank account down enough times, it's just going to happen one day. Like, there's going to be a bank error in your favor. That's just not how it works.
Right. I think that, we have to stay active and grounded, for lack of a better word. We couldn't use that word any better now that we've got an electrician at the table, in the way that we talk about manifestation, right? And that means that we need to remember that we do have to have action and be pushing toward what we're trying to create, and trust that the pieces will fall in line as we are moving for whatever that is that we're trying to build, right? But we can't just sit by and actually think it's going to land in our lap, because it doesn't work that way.
Yeah. And I especially think that we do a lot of conversations about woo space and about, personal accountability and introspection, but there comes a point where if you're not doing the work, you're not going any further. You're still the same person rattling around in your own skull, making no promises. So with that being said, right, when it comes to grounded manifestation, like, yes, we can all build things, we can all create, but what does it look like to keep your feet firmly planted on the ground while being able to still keep your head in the clouds in a good way, right? So let's, as Jennifer mentioned, right, Jessie, our in-house electrical expert, right? What does grounding actually do when we're talking about in the electrical world, right? What is grounding?
Oh, you are gonna test me. If Gabe were here, he could give you like a much more in-depth answer, but basic grounding is in place. Electricity wants to move. And so that's what your electrical system does is the power comes from the utility, it comes into your house and it wants to move around the house. And when there is excess electricity, it gets sent to ground. That's its home base. It wants to go back to the ground. That's why grounding systems are really important in electrical systems. If you're looking at like an outlet, the two prongs on the top, one's the hot, one's the neutral, and that little circle one, that's the ground. And that takes all of the excess electricity, sends it back into the earth. Gabe could talk a lot about grounding and bonding. That's a whole nother world, and how surge protection plays into grounding. But grounding is back to the earth.
Right. So I think that as we're talking about manifestation, what brings us back to reality when the plans exceed our current capacity, right? When we have that, there's so much energy in the house, or there's so much electricity running through. What is the thing that can keep us grounded when we feel like we're acting beyond capacity?
Oh,
That's a great question. I think for everybody, there can be something different. I know for me, right, go outside, right, go like walk in nature, which is the most like pedantic and boring response, considering we just talked about like it puts it back in the earth. And
You're
I'm like,
connected to the earth, girl.
exactly. I will run around barefooted like a heathen, but it's got to be the right kind of environment to keep that. What about you, Jessie?
Um, actually, I'm thinking through, like, I'm feeling really blessed because it's been a while since I felt that level of overwhelm and needed to like go back to that grounding, because I've been cultivating a life that I love and I'm not getting overwhelmed by. So, small moment of gratitude there. But yeah, I separate myself from whatever's happening physically. I have to walk away. Usually it involves like my safe place is in the back of my closet, and I just like curl into a ball in a little fetus position. Typically, if I'm in a moment of overwhelm and I need that grounding, it usually involves music. I usually put in headphones and I listen to, particularly, I don't know why, but this is my track. I've been the top listener on Spotify for the past like 10 years of Thomas Newman's music for the Finding Nemo soundtrack. Just that like serene, like underwater, like just it's such a beautiful track, and like that just like helps me breathe and helps me get through.
What about you, Jen?
Things that ground me really are, kind of, I guess, kind of typical things like being literally grounding myself, putting my feet in the grass, just like you said, Ashleigh. I think that meditation, prayer, those types of things kind of keep me back, centered on what really is important and what's really happening right now, and trying to keep all of the noise. And what I've been trying to do is really, over the past month or so, shut out the noise, right? And stay focused on what the goal is. And I think that in context of this conversation, that really is grounding, right? Like when I try to shut out all the noise and just remain on the ground with my ideas, is it's hard
Oh,
sometimes
yeah.
because it can be overwhelming, right? There's always a lot of things that are trying to get our attention and pull us off our path. But, I think it is just coming back to, centering ourselves and re-talking through what is the goal, what are we trying to accomplish, and just kind of shutting all that stuff out. But it takes effort, definitely takes effort.
Something you
Reminding that you can have a ton of ambition, you can have the best goals and dreams, and they're achievable. Like, I'm not trying to like slow everybody down. If you're on a roll, get it. But a lot of times just remembering that one foot in front of the other is the only way to get to that end goal, right? And you can't do it all at one time. It's not all going to happen overnight. So just taking that breath and going, okay, this is what I have to tackle today to reach that goal, that manifestation.
Yeah, we
well,
have to be very much aware of our capacity,
oh yeah.
right?
And I was gonna say, Jennifer,
The
like it
Dems.
sounds like something you said made me think of a question, and I have what I would answer, but I'd love to hear both of your thoughts on, when you are on a path and you do get some of those distractions, how do you know if those distractions are telling you to pivot your path or if they are truly distractions?
Mhm.
Great question.
It is a great question. And I think that it's kind of like in financial planning, right? What are the goals? What are the goals? We've discussed goals, we've written them down. Is this thing that is trying to distract me, is it going to further my path on that goal, or is it going to take me further away from that goal? Sometimes it's not easy to see.
Mm.
Sometimes it's not easy to see. And to your point, Jessie, is the goal really my goal, right? Has something changed that makes that goal no longer my goal? And the only thing that I can say is counsel that I give my daughter, often. And when I'm talking to people and they're like, but I feel like that, like, pause. We have to pause, maybe let a couple of minutes pass and decide, are we trying to make make a shift because of something that's happening that's temporary, or is it really something that we need to take into consideration?
Yeah.
So I think for me that's the top tool, is just to put a pause for a second and try to really evaluate what's going on.
I like what you
What about
said
you, Ashleigh?
about like on the path to your goal. Like, does this decision align with what my desired outcome is? And I think that's a really good guiding principle in thinking through, some of these distractions and or pivot.
Yeah. Or has the goal changed?
Right.
Has this new piece of information made you decide that what you were working toward is no longer what you're working toward?
Go through this. It's funny. I was going to say something very similar. I go through this with my kids a lot, right? Kids are great curveballs. We all know. And sometimes they'll hit me with something and I'm like, "Ooh, okay, I don't like that." Is my goal to be right in this moment, or is my goal to teach you the outcome, or to have you learn a lesson, or to get you to experience it, right? Like, and sometimes I do think it's important to acknowledge that goals can and do pivot. I think the important thing for noticing the difference between a distraction and a pivot is, can you see yourself truly happy at the end if you play by play it out, right? Hi, Leo. If you play out what this pivot or what this distraction can cause, is it temporary? Is it long term? Does it play into, and let's just say professional goals are just one part of a manifestation, right? But in reality, our lives are so intertwined, right? Our professional goals usually play somehow into our personal goals and our family goals and our financial goals, right? A pivot will still be able to align with all of those things in the end. A distraction will only fulfill one, and usually very temporarily.
Right.
I like
Very good
that.
point. Very good point. So one of the things that I want to talk about is the gap, right? The gap between our intention and execution. And
Mm.
sometimes setting a goal is like drawing the electrical diagram. Okay. It may tell us what you want it to look like when it's finished, or what the finished system should do. But the diagram the diagram is not the complete wiring, right? When we're talking about
Or
this. So
when you open up walls in a residential setting in a 1950s home and you expect to see it wired correctly, and it in fact was not wired correctly. So yeah, lots of
Or
pivots.
you pull the plans off the internet and they're missing the color coding and which
Yeah.
wires go to which thing, and it's just lines going to boxes and it makes no sense.
Or what
Right.
happens 9 times out of 10 where there are no plans. The homeowner just says, get it done. So it's a lot of figuring it out.
So when you guys started Supersun Electric, what did the original blueprint look like?
I don't know that it was very clearly defined at the beginning. We had our mission and our passion to transform the trade, and Gabe knew how to be a wonderful service technician, and that was really all we had. And so he started running electrical service calls, and we had, this intention of changing the world, but we didn't put anything into practice to really do that. I mean, we were still kind of just doing the things that other electrical contractors do. I mean, we were just getting calls and we were doing the service calls and then we were collecting money and then we were just moving on. And I think it's partially because everything was happening so fast and other also because there's not really a blueprint to running a business until you run a business. And so both of us were brand new in this business owner role and understanding how the back end of a business works and the operation side and how to acquire clients and like all of that stuff. And so I really do think we like lost sight of that vision in that first year of business because we were just throwing spaghetti at the wall. And both of you
You just
know,
need to
but
make money.
right. And both of you know this story, but I guess other people listening might not. But on our 1 year anniversary, we had hired some staff members. We had felt like we were doing really great, and we ran out of money.
Mm-hmm.
And our bank account had like less than $100 in it. We had a Monday meeting where I told my whole staff, "This is just your last week because we don't have any money. We owed our supply houses over like $60,000." And that was a really, really big wake up call
Um,
and a humbling moment for us to have said, "This is it. I'm throwing in the towel." Like we could have done that. And we didn't. Instead, we looked at each other and we said, "This is going to be really hard, but we are on a mission to change the world. So how are we going to actually do that?" So we got a series of professionals in place to help us help keep guardrails. We got a lovely financial advisor, who's with Jennifer's team. We've got a good banker. We got a good business coach. We've got all of these guardrails in place now to help us work towards our vision. And now we're building systems and processes to help build that vision. Like we're putting in the work now instead of just hoping to change the world. So it's been a really roller coaster of an experience. But I talk about business ownership the same way I talk about parenting, where it's the best and worst thing you'll ever do.
So I agree with that also. So we hear a little bit about what cost you financially, right? Was going into it without a plan, bulldozing forward and going, hey, we can make money. Like that's, which so many business owners go into it going, cool, I'll get to that. We just need to make money, right? But what do you think cost you emotionally and in your relationship? Because working with your spouse and also the father of your children and living together is a
It's a lot.
incredibly unique dynamic. Very few people, I think, really understand like how difficult that is. So let's talk about the emotional costs that came with
Mm,
going after your goals and wanting to change the world for the electrical
yeah.
industry.
So Gabe and I this November will have been married for 5 years. We're going on a second honeymoon. We're really excited. Um, well, we're redoing our honeymoon. So married 5 years. So I guess when we started the business, we were married for about 3 years. We've known each other since we were like 15 years old. And so at that point, we had a pretty stable relationship, very stable. We're married, we had kids, we're loving our life. Uh, we had a really interesting introduction to our romantic relationship because it was in COVID. And during COVID, you either found out that you really liked or really didn't like people. And we really liked each other. We really liked spending time together. So we'd already navigated how to inhabit a lot of space and a lot of time together. But the business was a whole new level of having to navigate communication. And I remember there was a pivot point in the way that we were communicated with each other that was really painful. And specifically, I think it was probably around 7 to 8 months into business when this is all, we were throwing spaghetti at the wall. This is before we had hired anybody on staff. And so Gabe was in charge of all of sales and installation, and I was in charge of new business development. And I'd never done new business development before. I didn't really know what that meant. And so I'd go networking and then I'd go get coffee with people. And I was like, this is the best job ever. I just go get coffee and I hang out and talk to people. And I didn't understand that, like, at the end of that coffee, to make that appointment worthwhile, like, there's an ask that comes with it of like, how do we support each other in business? And I didn't have any tools in place. And so honestly, I just got coffee. That was my job, is I just got coffee.
Right.
And there was a day where Gabe was working 16-hour days at this time. He wasn't seeing our kids. He was exhausted. He actually herniated a disc in his back, so he was in pain, and he was getting to his breaking point. And there was a day where he just blew up. And Jennifer, I know you've heard this story where what the words that came out of his mouth and what he meant were very different things.
Yes.
The words that came out of his mouth were, you don't do crap for this business. You should just go get a job. You're not helpful at all. And I was
Right.
like, whoa. The words that he meant were, for this to work, I need more from you. And it was a really cool moment because, first of all, nobody likes to be told those things. So I was like, in that moment, I was hearing these like really nasty words, and I was able to like take a beat and like put my emotions on a pause so that I could hear this constructive feedback. And then I said, okay, I hear you. I'm going to have a little bit of an emotional breakdown because those words were not nice to hear. I'm going to get through my feelings, and then I'm going to determine what next steps need to happen. And I think from that, we've both gotten a lot more strategic in communicating with each other when we're getting close to a breaking point, when I need you to support me in the business or I need you to support the kids. Like, hey, I got some stuff I got to get done. Like right now, he failed because he let the boy out here, but he's in charge of the kids and I'm out here recording. So we've done a lot more of communicating just every feeling under the sun now, so that we're not hitting that breaking point and just exploding on each other. So it's being in business and raising children and building a life with the same person is a lot, and it really stretches your relationship, and you have to keep choosing to work at that. So we're still working on our business relationship, we're still working on our marriage, we're still working on our parenting relationship, and we still want to contribute to all of those relationships with each other. And I think that's what makes it work.
I want to take a minute and acknowledge two things. One, Jessie, I think we would be remiss if we did not celebrate the fact that you were able to take that criticism, to hear that, to see what that means, because that's beyond just being like self-reflective, right? That is literally the epitome of what we're talking about here. Is you can manifest everything being perfect, but that is such a strong example of taking something that was not welcomed, right? Like you said, no one wants to hear, putting yourself in a space and going, I'm still willing to work hard to make this happen. And you did that constructively, and you did that with a sound mind, and you were honest with yourself and with Gabe. And I think that deserves celebration in and of itself. Like, that's so hard. So kudos to you.
Absolutely.
The other
Really
thing is,
proud of myself that day. I did
as
start
you should have been.
bawling. I did start having a breakdown. And I told him, I was like, I hear the words you're saying, but I need to emotionally process this. So like it was not pretty. I was ugly crying. But like I was able to take that constructive criticism. And I was like, that was one of my more proud moments, I think, like in my life. I'm pretty proud of that one.
Growth is ugly. I'm so sorry. I don't care what people tell you, their glow ups and all this. No, growth is painful and ugly and hurts, and you make ugly cry faces. It's fine.
Sometimes
The
there's
other thing is,
right.
yeah, the other side of that is I love hearing that within this space, you and Gabe not only were able to prioritize acknowledging that, yes, this business had to change and you had to take as his business partner that constructive criticism, but also he had to give you space. He had to hear you back.
Yeah.
But then y'all still prioritized the merit together. Y'all still prioritized the marriage and communication and acknowledging that you can't let one take precedent over the other. Like these things have to coexist. And I know firsthand it can be very, very hard for those things to coexist. And a lot of times one just gets put on the back burner and one, you work on getting really, really good at. To do those things simultaneously is very hard. And I don't want anybody watching or listening to this to think for 5 seconds that working with your partner, your spouse, the person you live with, your kids, any of that is easy. It is not. Working with friends is hard, much less when you have to like live and eat and sleep with a person. And
Because
that is the kind of work that it takes to build your dreams, to
yeah,
create manifestation.
because when you're working with people who are close to you, you're navigating a multifaceted relationship. When you're working with a coworker, you know them as the coworker. But when you're working with your spouse, you know them as a lot of different people, and it's really interesting. Since then, we have hired an installer, and he's also my brother-in-law. And so we were navigating this working relationship between brother and employee. And actually, my business coach gave us a really great advice to write out this contract of, listen, when we're at work, we're going to be at work. And when we're at home, we're going to be at home. So when we're at home, we're not going to talk about work things with mom or your brothers or the kids and how you feel you're unfairly compensated or whatever. But when we're at work, we're gonna keep those buckets pretty separate. It's been honestly, I think that relationship's been harder for me to navigate than the one with Gabe, because the one with Gabe is a lot more blurred because he's husband and business partner and father and all of these things in my life, and so that line is a little more blurred. But that one was more challenging for me to navigate, is employing my younger brother-in-law in, how do I stay like a true to myself, but also like have those two sides where like I'm professional Jessie, where I need to give you constructive criticism, or like on the lunch break we can bullshit together and that's fine. And so it's been interesting. To your point, yeah, it is not a walk in the park, but in my opinion, totally worth it.
I think too, this is where, in bringing it all back into manifestation language, like this is where manifestation culture can really mislead people, right?
Mhm.
Because we spend a lot of time imagining what the finished result is going to look like. We think a lot about it, a thriving business and healthy relationships. And, we think about a beautiful home and we have financial freedom and we're manifesting a successful launch of a business. But what we don't spend nearly enough time imagining is the rejection,
Mm.
right? Bookkeeping, difficult clients, mistakes that we're going to make, uncomfortable conversations that we're going to have, the repeated follow-ups that we're going to have to do, right? The decisions that nobody celebrates. And I think that we kind of get lost when we're imagining what this beautiful thing is going to be, how much work it's going to take to get us there. Like, again, we have to be active about it. It is not something that just we dream it and it falls in our lap, right? You build it and they will come, but you got to build it.
Yeah. Lay some bricks.
So that, the unseen work really matters, because goals, often aren't won or lost on things nobody
Oh,
nobody posts about,
yeah.
right?
100%. 100%.
I like taking videos some days of like me sitting at my desk and working, or like specifically, when I need to go out networking and I'm feeling exhausted, like I'll take a video of me just like dog tired on the couch, because I think it's important to show the ugly side of entrepreneurship, or honestly building a dream of any kind. It's
Yeah.
hard, and I think social media these days glorifies that end product, and there's not enough content or people talking about the challenge of working
The blood,
towards
sweat,
your
and
goals.
tears that goes into it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or you hear a lot of the rhetoric of people talking about it, but there's no show. And I don't think there's a lot of transparency to it, right? We can all talk about our failures, but it's like, oh, anecdotally, as we sit around and we, sharing our successes. Yeah, it was hard, but there's not really witness to that struggle. So I want to ask, I'm really guilty of this. And this is one of the reasons that, in our goals things, I like to put in like, what are you willing to sacrifice to meet your goals kind of thing.
Mm.
What have you maybe loved the idea of more than you loved what it was going to take to get? And is that applicable in building Supersun? Were there things where y'all were like, oh no, this is great, and then you started doing it, you're like, never mind, like that's maybe not as great as I thought?
Funny you ask, because I'm navigating that right now, where the early stages of business, I was like holistically in a new business development, where I was getting coffee, and after I'd cracked the code and learned how to convert potential clients into like booked appointments from coffee chats, I still loved it. I'm a people person. I like to be out in the world and I love to get coffee. And right now I'm navigating a transition. I've done a lot of analysis of the data on where I'm getting my leads, and noticing that some of the networking groups I was a part of are no longer serving me. So I'm transitioning my new business development time and focusing more on strategic partnerships. And so the amount of time networking is significantly condensed. So now I have all of this time to do business owner things, which has existed as just kind of this like bubble of like, I know there's
Yeah.
things I need to do, but I never have time, so I'll leave it until I guess I have time. And now I have this time. And so I'm sitting in front of my computer and I'm like, okay, I know I need to be doing something. And so I'm having a really hard time during this transition to doing business owner things, and it's not glamorous, and it's making me think like, I really liked the job of doing new business development, but I understand that to build our business, to build our mission, our vision of transforming the trade, I have to make the sacrifice to get to the next level. And Gabe has had this experience as well. He loves being a service technician, and now with our installer, we're sending him all of the electrical installs, and Gabe's like, man, like there's more business owner things I'm doing, and they're nice and I enjoy them, but I really miss doing that other thing. So
Yeah.
it's an interesting feeling.
It's
Yeah, there's a
very,
lot of
very,
sacrifices.
it's very common with especially tradespeople, right?
Hmm.
You do the trade because you enjoy it, right? You enjoy turning the wrench, or you enjoy the interaction of, putting wires together and seeing the lights come on. That's really kind of a cool thing, right? And then once you decide that you want to own that business, you don't want to have to work for every dollar that's coming in. You want to
That
have,
immediate gratification leaves the equation.
and they don't enjoy the business owner side.
Yeah.
And so, I think that leap from being a solopreneur where it's just you and your wrench and a couple of clients is very different from trying to change the world on how they view electricity and how they view electricians and what they should expect, right?
Yeah.
So you guys have definitely signed up for, which makes me think, one of the most important clarifying questions that we can ask when we're trying to consider what we're trying to do is, do I want the actual outcome? Do I want to be the business owner? Or
At
do
all
I
costs.
just want the identity or the recognition or the feeling that I have attached to that outcome? Because wanting to be known as a successful business owner is not the same as wanting to build and operate a successful business.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think that, when we're going about these endeavors or thinking about them, this kind of conversation is so important because people may not be aware that what the struggles are.
Oh yeah.
So anybody who's thinking of going into business or, taking their love for doing a certain thing and turning it into a business, you kind of don't get to do the thing you love anymore.
Yeah, if you love doing the thing, maybe find a company that aligns with your morals. Electricians, check out Supersun.
Yeah.
But, yeah, being a business owner a lot of times means, like you said, giving up on the things that you enjoy doing about it and having to do other things. And I myself was terrible at that. And, I had to swallow a lot of pills that, like, in a similar position, I struggled to have to be able to, like, do the grown up things and not do the part of the stuff that I enjoyed. And it really is hard. And you have to take a hard look at yourself. And sometimes you see things you don't like, despite what you thought you were going to see.
It goes back to what you were saying earlier, Ashleigh, that growing is ugly. And I've been experiencing that time and time again because so much of this business owner role is growing and evolving and learning new things. And it feels horrible because most of the time people are going into business because they either really enjoy or they excel or both at a specific craft, a specific trade. And then you go into business and there's all these other things that you have to learn. And you're not good at those things. So you're used to being fantastic at the top of your class, very knowledgeable, and then you run into this arena where you are very much not that. And so
a permanent failure wall.
It's been really like an emotional journey. And to your point earlier, Jennifer, Gabe and I have looked at the trajectory and we've said we want to be those business owners. And so we're understanding that to become that, we have to go through several evolutions of ourselves and we have to let go of some of the things that we've loved. And you hold on to some of the things that you've loved, but it becomes this evolution and to reach that goal. But it is hard, and I don't think enough people talk about how challenging it is.
Yeah. So another one of the things that stands out really, Jessie, about Supersun is the emphasis on transparency and customer education. You're in one of those industries, right? Like kind of like mine, where customers is at an enormous disadvantage, right? Because most homeowners don't know enough about electrical systems to independently evaluate every recommendation.
And ChatGPT doesn't count.
No, not in my industry either, really. So how intentional were you about building trust through plain language explanations? And this goes to you, Ashleigh, too, because in your business, all of that applies. Like you're in a business where your clients are often disadvantaged as far as not having all the information to be able to make the educated decisions.
And again, they love to go to the internet or ask their neighbor first.
Absolutely.
I think it's two things. I think the first is the intent and the passion, the heart behind the technician that shows up at your door. Everyone's afraid of being scammed by specifically home service trades. And what we're trying to craft and what we're modeling off of, particularly Gabe, is the heart of it. When he shows up to a service call, his intention isn't to sell. His intention is to dig into the puzzle. I mean, he's got an engineer's mind. He wants to dig into the puzzle. He wants to look at the electrical system. He wants to find out what's working, what's not working, and then be able to share that with the homeowner. So I think part one of that is the intention behind why somebody's showing up at your door. Now, the follow through on it is what Gabe has learned in sales languaging is like, how do you communicate that to the client in an intelligent way without making them feel dumb? Specifically talking about electrical systems, there's a lot of technical jargon, there's a lot of theory, there's a lot of codes, there's a lot that goes on behind your walls, and it's taken Gabe probably over 4 years of running electrical service calls to find out how to appropriately have that languaging to allow people to understand and to feel heard. when you show up at an electrical service call. And so it's this dance. You have to have the right intention, but you also have to be able to communicate effectively what the problem is and how to solve it. And I think the two of those is what builds that trust.
I agree. I think also acknowledging that not every customer is your customer, and that's okay. Some people are going to want you to take shortcuts, or they're going to want to, they're not going to like your price, or they're not going to hold the same values for what they want out of that service for what you're providing. So I 100% agree with that. I think you nailed it on the head when you said, what is the intention to the person showing up to provide the service? And like, this applies to you, Jennifer, as well. It's like, if the idea is to just make a bunch of money, you can call anybody for in any one of our industries, right? Automotive, electrical, financial service, you can call somebody who will take your money. That is not a hard thing to find. To find somebody who wants to show up and really is passionate about finding what the root of your problem is, helping you find a solution that actually is the best long-term solution, and then trying to do so in a way that can be explained to you so you understand it. You don't walk away going, okay, it's taken care of, but I don't know how. It's wanting to have people go, oh, that was my issue. Cool. And now you've fixed it and I understand how and why it was fixed, is so important. And as you mentioned, like, we're in a day and age where the internet is absolutely rampant with DIYers, people who want to self-educate, which I'm not hating on, but there is a reason that electricians and mechanics and financial planners charge what they do, is because it is dangerous. It takes decades of practice and tools and expertise to be good and safe at what you do on behalf of somebody else. And, then we hear the horror stories of, bad service providers that kind of ruin the pot for everybody else. And you're constantly coming up behind somebody who's got some kind of horror story about I know in our industry, everybody has a bad mechanic story. Like, I don't know a single person I could think of other than children off the top of my head that could not tell me a story about a mechanic that has taken advantage of them, ripped them off, lied to them, upsold them things they didn't need. Like, it's insane. And so not only are you fighting an industry that is relatively flooded, right? All three of us work in pretty flooded industries. We are not the only ones to provide the services we provide, but we're also trying to do so with a lot of negative stigma.
Yeah.
And, very rarely do people walk into their doctor and argue their doctor about their diagnosis, right? They're like, okay, doc, save my life. We don't have that luxury. People want to come in and they want to argue, and they're already defensive. And I do think that transparency plays such a huge part of that, of going, here's how we got to this. Let me explain to you. And educating your customers, I think, is one of the most valuable assets to building a strong business, and doing so with positive intention, not to just rip people off.
Well, and I think that to that point, Ashleigh, it's interesting because I was just having a conversation today where we were talking about the way that you have to kind of lay things out for people, so that, yes, and it's all education, right? You have to lay out all of these education pieces about, this is what this means and what we see the outcome generally is. And then we're going to move to the next one. We're going to talk about what that means and what generally we see the outcome being. And we want to lay all of this out in a way so that they get an understanding, and then ask the questions so that they come up with a solution. Because that's the only way, at least in my field, a lot of times they've done some, like you said, internet surfing, right? Words are not coming to me very well today. Again, they've done their own research. They've come in with some preconceived notions about which way they want to go. And then when you really start to look through and give them pieces of education on all of those things, you have to kind of lead them to a place where they can make an informed decision based on all of that information.
And then it's their choice. And then they're glad to hand you their money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's not really manipulation. It's manipulating because it's not in a bad way.
Manipulation,
manipulation gets such a bad connotation because of the way that word is used in our society. But really, it's not meant in a bad way. It's just, I'm going to show you.
Influencing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Educating.
So that you make the choice that's actually going to be the better one for you in the long run.
And we tell our
Yeah, I
clients
think
when we do service calls, I mean, we provide typically 3 estimates, and we'll talk through, hey, I did a full electrical inspection, and I noticed some things were, of concern. This is what I found. You are welcome to move forward with it. You also, like, we'll tell you this is a red flag, or this is, a warning sign, or this is low priority. And then we'll swipe through and we'll say, this is another solution that has less of those lower priority items on it and really just those red flags. Or, hey, you just called us out to change this outlet. Here's an estimate to change that outlet, and the decision's yours. And so passing that decision back to the client is a beautiful way of like allowing choice into the matter, specifically when somebody might feel guarded and afraid of being taken advantage of.
And Ashleigh, I know you guys do that too in your estimates.
Yeah, so we do a very similar thing, right? Where it's like a good, better, best of like, hey, here's everything we found. We can take care of all of it. Here's going to be the total. Or, hey, here's the safety, like your brakes will not be stopping you, right? Like this has to get done, and we've had to literally tell people you can't drive your vehicle out of here by law. Like you will have to tow it if you choose not to do this. Or, hey, you called us to run a code. I ran the code. Here's what the code said. And like, that's up to you. And I do think that, again, that transparency, that honesty plays very heavily into letting people, feel that they're getting a value and building a relationship. You come out and you already do the extra. You already showed them. They can go to any service provider. And Jessie, I know y'all see this. Jennifer, I know you do this one in yours too, of like, hey, here's everything I saw. You can go anywhere with that information.
Yeah.
That's now their proprietary information that you already did the work for. And it just builds that, that bit of trust. And I also think it's important to come at people with a sense of, kind of that golden rule, right? I'm not going to demand you pay me before I show up. So I want you to trust me. So I'm going to have to elicit that trust initially beforehand. And that's going to be how we build that good working relationship.
Mm-hmm.
With that said, how truthfully honest, and it sounds like, Jessie, you are a lot like Jennifer and I, where you try to be very reflective and almost harsh on yourself of where you need growth, right? Where have you had to be honest with yourself about your skills or limitations as the business grows? And where have you seen, hey, this is just not something I'm going to take on? Like you said, you had to put in people to put guardrails when it came to, financial planning and some of these other things. What did it look like having to go from, we're going to change the world, we already failed once, or not failed, but we hit a brick wall once, we're going to change the world, to, okay, this is not a strength I can have. And in order for us to be successful, I have to be honest that this is not something I can move forward on.
I think it comes down to realistic expectations of like, there's only so many hours in the day. And I am much like both of you in that I try to be Wonder Woman and I try to be everything all the time at once. And I had a series of months where I was really falling apart because I was trying to be too much. And I remember specifically when I had my second kiddo, which, by the way, when we hit that brick wall, ran out of money for the business, I was 7 months pregnant. So we were like, well, crap, what are we going to do now? And I remember specifically when I was planning for my maternity leave, I used quotations because I spent a week at home and then I was back out working with my girl. I brought her with me. And I remember, though, sitting and planning and saying, these are all of the things that are currently on my plate. This is what my capacity is, because I know that 50, 75, whatever percent is going to be going to, healing my body and healing my baby. And so I know that I only have 50% capacity for work and I have 100 things that need to get done. So we sat down and had a meeting, albeit a very guided by my business coach, who was like, Jessie, you can't handle everything. And I was like, no, I can. And he's like, no, you really need to take a look at this, because you can't, what is that Ron Swanson quote? You can't half-ass two things, whole-ass one thing. So, I remember having that conversation and I was like, okay, social media posting is not something that I can handle. So let me put that on a back burner. And that was really hard because I like to do it all and I want to be great at all of the things. And so I had to really sit and I had to pick and choose and decide like what are the highest leverage opportunities that I need to be focusing on. And one of those that has to be on the plate is my health and the health of my children. And those things cannot fall off of the plate. And so there's only so much room. So those things have to be there. What other things are going to be there? And sometimes they get shifted. And that was the biggest pill for me to swallow was you can't do it all.
I think that's incredible. I think it's smart that you went from going, how do I get what I want? How do we build this business to what am I prepared to actually take the responsibility of right now, physically, mentally, emotionally, financially, and then put that into place? Because I think that's where manifestation takes a hard left for a lot of people, is that desire to want to do it all, right? But you got to be really honest with yourself of where you either need help or where something can be put on the back burner so that you can focus on what you're really good at so that you can start to make impact and then take steps towards growing that or getting the help that you need in order to do so.
Well, and
Yeah,
something
for
that
sure.
Gabe and I have a conversation about a lot is, we look at these multi-millionaires. Specifically, I'm thinking of Alex and Layla Mosey, who we listened to several of their pieces of content, and we're like, man, I want to be them. I want to build a business like that. And we had to take into consideration, like they built their business as a young couple without children, and that is not our reality. We have our
Right. Yep.
3-year-old boy and I have my 8-month-old girl, and we could sacrifice our family time to build our dream business, but that's not a trade-off that I'm willing to make. I could sacrifice my entire electrical vision of transforming the trade to focus entirely on my children, but that's also not a sacrifice I'm willing to make. So we have had to come to the conclusion of like, we are going to do the best that we can with what we have. And sometimes that's going to mean being amazing business owners. And sometimes that's going to mean being amazing parents. And on the flip side, sometimes we're going to be crappy at business owners and crappy at parenting. And like, because you only have so much
Balance in
capacity.
all things, Jessie. Balance in all things.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there was another podcast on balance where like balance is not as sexy as it sounds. It's actually really ugly and really challenging and a lot more fluid than what people think of it as.
Yeah. So I would love to ask, I know, we've talked about this and for those of you listening or watching that don't know and didn't catch on, Jessie is a member of Whirl. So we actually have spent a good bit of time with Jessie outside of this recording. She is not some rando we found on the street. We actually
Although
do
that'd
know and
be an
love her
interesting
dearly.
business model, right?
I mean, maybe we're onto something. Maybe we'll start a spinoff of like Third Space Randos. I don't know, but I know that
Pass
Jessie,
the tea. Pass
yeah,
that tea.
yeah. I have none. Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Thank you for holding me accountable. This is what this is about, for the record. But we know that you started doing some electrical courses yourself to educate yourself beyond just being kind of the admin CEOs and partnership side of this, but to really educate yourself with what it is that Gabe already knows and does so that you have that understanding of your business. What has it been like? What do people, let me ask it this way, do people a lot of times come up and assume that Gabe makes all the decisions and you kind of stand and smile and go, sure, honey, and not really appreciate the fact that not only are you running the whole back end of things while managing your household, but you're also trying to educate yourself on the actual field of doing electrical work?
I have two branches from that. The first is talking about capacity and talking about um, sacrificing. I really wanted to. I do have my electrical apprentice license. I really wanted to get enrolled into the IEC, Independent Electrical Contractors Network, to go through a full 4-year course to learn the electrical trade. And they graduate where you are studied up for your electrical journeyman's license. I really wanted to do that so that I could be much more knowledgeable about the craft that we're doing. And we sat and looked at the numbers and realized that my services are a lot more needed in running this business than learning that skill. And so that was something that I ended up setting back down. I might pick it back up someday, but for now, I don't need that knowledge because Gabe has that knowledge. And so I'm spending my time and energy learning new things. Talking about sacrifice. Now, I have had this is a great story. It is an interesting thing. I feel almost like I'm lying when I say a woman in the trades because I'm not actually out there with my tools. Now I have been putting in outlets on my knees when I was big pregnant belly, installing stuff. So I know a percentage of the hard work that it takes to be in the field. But I do feel inauthentic if I say I'm a woman in the trade. But I am a trades business owner. Like that is fully authentic. And it is an interesting perception being a woman in the trades business. And my favorite story is I was on a walk with my dad and we ran into a friend of his, and this was an older gentleman. And my dad is so proud. And my dad's telling this older gentleman, they knew each other, that, yeah, my daughter works with her husband and he's a master electrician. He's over there, he's installing stuff. And he was being proud. And, the older gentleman looks at me, he goes, "Oh, so are you like his secretary?" And I said, "Oh, no, sir, I'm in charge."
Yeah. Yep.
I'm in charge.
He works for me. Thank you.
It's been funny because Gabe and I have been figuring out what each of our roles are in this business, and he's really fallen into this position of focusing on sales and focusing on marketing. He's much more product, and I'm much more people. I'm focusing on our systems, our processes, how to run our business. And so when it evolves to have a full C-suite, I will be the CEO and he'll be probably, I don't know, what CMO, CFSO, chief of sales and marketing. And so he had this realization. He was like, "Wait, you're in charge and I just work here." I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "This is pretty cool because I get all this credit." And to be fair, like he is very transparent and very wonderful when it comes to talking about who handles what. Like he will sing my praises all day, as I do for him, because we both handle very different things for the business and we would not be here without each other. But yeah, sometimes people are like, "Oh, you're a secretary?" No, I'm not. I'm everything. I do it all.
I do all the things.
All.
So I want to just kind of bring this back as we kind of start to wrap this up. I want to leave the listeners with some things very practical, me. And it's something that when we're trying to create, build, or change that we can walk through. It's called a 5-part audit. And Jessie, it was kind of built in your honor. So number one, the first portion of this 5-part audit is that we need to name the vision, right? When we're trying to talk about what are we trying to create? What are we trying to build? What is the vision? What do I actually want? Not who do I want to impress or what is it that I'm supposed to want, but not even what would prove that I'm worthy of this thing, but what is it that I actually genuinely want to create? So name the vision. The second portion is to map the load. Okay. What is this goal in time, money, attention, energy, and knowledge and support? What is it going to take? And what is already drawing power from my system? And do I currently have the capacity, or will something else have to change?
I love this so much already.
Number 3, check the circuit. Okay. What habits, systems, skills, or relationships will carry this goal? What is the weakest connection, or where is the weakest connection, and what repeatedly interrupts your progress?
I love that one.
That's good.
Very important step. I think that's kind of the step that I'm kind of stuck in right now. And then do the unseen work. What actions matter, even if nobody notices it? What is it that really is important that has to be done, even if nobody's even aware of it? What follow-up, maintenance, training, planning, and repetition is required? And what am I tempted to skip because it's boring? It's uncomfortable or it's not glamorous. And then we have to stand behind what we built. If I receive what I'm asking for, am I prepared to maintain it? Will the outcomes still reflect my values? And this is where kind of you were talking before about we have to check along the way, right? That the path is still the path that we want to be on. Am I creating something durable? Is something that only looks successful from the outside? So that's kind of the 5-part audit that we would like to leave everybody with. And I know
I will link all that in the description and comments below. Yeah. So copy pasta and definitely tag us if you do want to respond. We would love to celebrate or help you dive deeper or just be a soundboard for anybody that wants to do it. Jessie, feel free to go ahead and add that on there. And I think one of the great takeaways about this is like, we don't have to throw away manifestation and vision boards entirely, right? Like having our woo moments where we, mantra to ourselves that we're going to be a cajillionaire doesn't have to go. But I do think that there is something really, really powerful about not only imagining ourselves where we aren't at yet, but putting in the practical steps to actually do the work to get where we want to be.
Right. Absolutely. Every business, relationship, or invention, there's meaningful change that begins with something that did not exist, right? We have to create those things. Someone had to imagine it before anyone could build it. But imagination is only the beginning, not the evidence that the outcome is guaranteed.
Yeah.
So, Jessie, what right now are your next goals in the real world that you are moving forward or that you are working towards that is probably a dream right now, but that you are putting in the effort to manifest beyond just changing the world of home electrical services?
First thing that comes to mind is we're in business to transform the electrical trade. However, I still want to make a lot of money. And what I plan on doing with that
Gotta
money
be honest.
is Gabe and I have our vision board, our manifestation is we're going to build a castle. We're going to build a castle with a moat and a koi fish pond, and we're going to put a shark in the pond, and we're going to have a tower for Dungeons and Dragons and another tower spire. I plan on having an animatronic dragon where you can like pull a lever and it blows fire, and on the walkway up to our castle, we're gonna have this stone path that talking about electrical, like each step you take, it's gonna light up. Like we've got this thing mapped out. So that's my vision. That's my.
I'll be at that housewarming. For the record, I will be at that housewarming. If that invitation gets lost in the mail, I will show up. Just for the record.
Killer parties in my castle.
Show up anyway.
You are all welcome when we get there.
Oh,
so yeah, we're really.
Well, you're in the right area to build a castle. That's all I can.
So that's what I'm working towards. But like to the point of this entire podcast, like I can't just dream of a castle and hope to get it. We're putting in all of this hard work in the business and all of this challenge that we're facing and these lifestyle adjustments. When we started the business, we were eating like ramen and cornbread, right? And making a lot less money than we were in our professional jobs. So like we are sacrificing our comfort now so that we can live very lavishly then. And that's what we're working towards.
Well, if you build it, when you build it, I will come, just for the record.
Good. I'll have a whole
party. My suggestion here is going to be reevaluate all along the way. All along the way and decide if that's really what you're continuing to want to build. Not poo-pooing on anything. I think it's amazing. So if something in today's conversation resonated with you, take a moment, sit with it. You do not have to resolve anything immediately. Sometimes just noticing what is true is the beginning of change.
And share this episode. Like I always say, like, comment, subscribe. It really does help us. Also, I will link where you can find Jessie. She does these fantastic Instagram and Facebook short videos of her talking about her day-to-day life of entrepreneurship, motherhood, being in an entrepreneurial relationship and with her husband. They're fantastic. They're inspiring. They're incredibly raw. They show, no offense, Jessie, but they absolutely show both the good, the bad, and
Yeah,
the ugly
that's
of
the
what it
point.
really looks like to manifest your dreams with more than just wishes and woos. And I love that. So I will get all of her information so you can find Jessie. I'm outside of here as well. And so, yeah, please do definitely stay in contact with us and with her. We would all appreciate it.
And
Yay.
you can connect with us through Third Space Conversations to learn more about Whirl, which is Women Helping in Real Life, which Jessie is a part of. Jessie, what would you say about anybody who's wanting to figure out a little bit more about what Whirl is about?
It is a really beautiful concept that has evolved past traditional networking and standing and saying your 30-second pitch and shaking hands and passing business cards. It's much more of a space to be, to exist, to figure out who you're becoming and how to navigate the life of being in business and the life of being, if you are a mother, the life of being a woman. It's much more who are you and who are you becoming and how are you getting there? What are you struggling with? And so it's almost my therapy session is my Friday mornings with the whirlies, and it's a very, very special group.
And as always, you can find us every Friday. We meet at 10801 North Mopac Expressway. We are in Building 1, Suite 350. Come to the third floor, get off the elevator, and follow the noise. And we would love to have you.
Yay.
And until next Wednesday, everybody, stay curious.
Stay connected.
And we will see you in the third space.
Thank you, Jessie.
Yay. Thank you.